Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a refreshing break and enjoyed the lunch. We are excited to continue the engaging discussions we've had so far today. We now move on to the third panel discussion on the topic, driving productivity and operational resilience through a tech-enabled bank. It's my privilege to invite on stage the panel of speakers for this session. Dr. Vijay Singh Shekhawat, CGM, Department of Supervision, Reserve Bank of India. Mr. Avinash Raghavendra, IT Head, Axis Bank. Mr. Nalin Agarwal, Director for Solutions Engineering, Dynatrace. Mr. Puneet Shahira, Head, Product Management and Marketing, Infosys Finacle. Mr. Vikrant Sabharwal, Director, Business Development Sales, AMEA TSYS. Mr. Sanjay Mudaliar, Executive Director, Bank of Baroda. And our moderator for this session, Mr. Anshul Verma, Expert Associate Partner, McKinsey & Company.
Thank you. I think my mic is working and everything. Yeah, I think you should be good.
Yeah, over to you.
All right, thank you so much and good afternoon, everyone. The topic for today that we'll be talking about, having a discussion on, is driving productivity and operational resiliency through technology. It's a critical topic. Our financial ecosystem is dynamic, and with that itself, all the banks are at a crossroads of innovation as well as resiliency, and how do we balance competing priorities. With soaring client and customer and user requirements, experience requirements, evolving our regulatory requirements as well that keep on coming up, also making sure that the disruptions that technology is bringing in, our banks need to not just adapt, but also make sure that we are thriving, we are adopting cutting-edge technologies, staying resilient, and then making sure that we are doing justice to these competing priorities. With the wealth of experience that the 6 panel members bring in today, I would like your permission to start the discussion. And Mr. Shekhawat, I would want to start with you today. Taking a regulatory lens, if we think about these competing priorities I was talking about, how should banks think about both complying to these requirements, because it's a priority for everyone, both from a supervisory perspective, regulator perspective, but also make sure that they are on the cutting edge of innovation, making sure that they're able to serve customers, protect customer interest as well.
All right, thank you. So that's priority for not just the regulators in India, but world over. So innovation has got 2 components, 2 costs, I would say. One is the cost that you do in actually innovating the product, and the second is the compliance cost. So there cannot be any trade-offs. There cannot be any offsets in this. That's something that I think all all supervised entities, all innovators here should bear in mind. Having said that, I want to break up this entire complex regulatory compliance infrastructure into a couple of components for discussion's sake. The first is, of course, the cyber security that is much talked about. That's much talked about. A lot of people have invested heavily into it. There are standard solutions available. There are information security service providers available. So you have the whole array of that. So that's something you can purchase, procure, in-source, outsource. You have all the options. But there's another aspect on which there is less emphasis, but that is equally critical and perhaps more critical than what we know of cybersecurity in traditional sense, which is data security.
Yeah.
So data security is something which has to be done internally. The controls have to be designed internally. The methods, the procedures, the manpower, everything has to be controlled very closely. You need internal assurance functions built around that. You need regulatory compliances to be submitted. You need statutory compliances with the DPDP now coming into effect. GDPR in Europe already there. You have all the laws there. So the data security, the cyber security, these are 2 things which by and large everybody is aware of, to some extent or the other have spent money in doing it. But there's a third aspect which is coming off late into the market, and something on which even we are coming out with regulations and we are very concerned about, which is model resilience. So there's a lot of model-driven work being done in the banks, especially where the client ends are concerned, whether it is on the credit side, whether it's on the investment side. So you have all these models being now built, and these models are turning into deep learning solutions. They're trying to find, patterns which were not existent, not discoverable till now. So the model governance, the model resilience, the model validation, the model testing, those areas are again becoming very, very critical for regulator. Now, as you can clearly see that these three areas require very different skill sets. They have a very different kind of outlay required. So this is something which has started becoming regulatory priorities in the order that I have listed. And accordingly, I think the banks, the non-banks, the players in the market, they would have to take cognizance of all these three aspects whenever there are products being created, innovated, offered, trying to productionize solution. You'll have to work on all three fronts. So I think that's my first take on that.
I think you've broken it down very nicely, and data being a foundation, it needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
All the models that you talked about, they're embedded in so many business processes today, you can't even differentiate between what is model-led and what is human-led as well, and it requires thorough thought and oversight on it. If I shift gears from a regulatory view to a banking view, Mr. Raghavendra, my next question is to you. How do you anticipate disruptions that might come in across the three areas that Mr. Shekhawat talked about, or others as well, and then make sure that you are prepared? What are the lessons as within Axis Bank, within your experience as well, that you've learned, and what you can share on those, anticipating these disruptions, and then making sure that you are proactively getting ahead of them?
Yeah, thank you, Anshul, and good afternoon all. See, there's no fireproof method over here. The way to look at it is in the domain of technology. I mean, we will invariably have to sort of focus in terms of constantly modernizing. It's when it comes to banks, one very frequently repeated word is legacy, right? And the point is, I mean, we can't just accept the fact that okay, this legacy is going to be there. India as a country is growing. I mean, most of the banks we are finding that payments are growing, transactions are growing. Right? More and more people are coming into banking. What it effectively means is that in this kind of a buoyant environment, if you are looking at growth, we will have to modernize the systems, and we will have to find some kind of a space to modernize the systems. I mean, typically in banks, we will be chased for business projects, we will get chased for VAPT items, etc. We will need to find some space for modernizing the structure as well. Okay. We will have to find some space to hollow the core. We'll have to find some space to, modularize the entire architecture that we essentially have. We will have to plan for infra. These are items which are now no longer negotiable. Okay, and this is something which I think we can take a leaf out of, larger entities out there, not necessarily banks, even the Googles of the world, etc., who have done a fantastic job in terms of SRE practices. The second important thing that we need to keep in mind on all of this is the fact that resilience asset design, almost like cyber asset design, is now equally important. We are investing heavily. We are creating new journeys, etc., for the customers. It's very important to essentially figure out the fact that okay, when I am connecting to an API, the API is essentially coming from the outside world. Yeah. The outside service provider will say I'm on cloud, etc. But we all know, I mean, these services will once in a year, maybe once in a couple of years, if you're lucky, etc. I mean, we will find some friction over there. There has to be a mechanism in terms of what happens when the friction happens. It's not easy. It is pretty tough. There is a constant a constant give and take in terms of the fact that okay, when you try to introduce these checks and balances, there is some additional efforts required. There is some additional focus on these kind of items. Not an easy discussion, but very, very important. The third thing is, all of us are working with partners over here, right? I mean, it's a very large ecosystem. But as bankers, we are custodians. I mean, we can't really offload our accountability, our responsibilities. I mean, but it is important that okay, partners equally recognize that, and we need to have the right kind of SLAs, SLOs in place. Do conversations with them in terms of our expectations. If you look at the largest outage which has struck the world last year, it was CrowdStrike, and And before a day prior to that particular outage, I'm sure if people had basically said about the fact that, okay, we want to introduce CrowdStrike in a setup, people would have said, excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the greatest tool out there.
Yeah.
So these are, pretty difficult choices. There are learnings out of, the incidents which has happened all around. And one big learning, of course, is the fact that we need to be prepared. So the entire thing around DR drills, etc., is super critical over there. We need to have our entire runbook around communicating with the customers, etc. Not only customers, as a runbook around communication internally, runbook about communicating with the regulators and others, okay, which needs to be there. It requires huge amount of planning, huge amount of tabletop exercises, purely because the day you require it, you need to be prepared for that. So I think banks are getting better at it. We are definitely better than what we used to be, say, 3-4 years back. We will, over the next few years, I think, start embracing concepts like site reliability engineering far greater than what we have currently done.
Yeah. If I summarize, Mr. Raghavendra, two things that you've called out very clearly. One is we are in an interconnected ecosystem. We need to trust our partners, we need to trust APIs, but we need to verify as well. Accountability lies with us only. Right? And that accountability also extends to the DPDP point that Mr. Shekhawat was talking about. While we might be the ones processing the data, we'll have a partner ecosystem, we'll update the contracts, responsibility still lies with you. And the second point that you said was that resiliency comes from conscious effort. You need to put in that effort, make sure that you are on top of it, and you continue doing that. I think that's very, very clear as a guidance for all the banks to continue. This also connects to the innovation part as well, that while you need to continue to put effort, Mr. Mudaliar, I'll come to you this time.
Yeah.
And when it comes to innovation, all of us talk about AI. AI has been enabling our business processes. Now there is Gen AI, there is multi-agent systems or agentic AI as well. But can you talk about how are you thinking about adopting innovation, innovative practices, AI in general, any use cases that you can share with the group? Please share your experience on that.
Yeah, thank you and good afternoon to everybody. See, as far as the topic is concerned, I don't think Gen AI or AI, we have got too many use cases for the resilience part directly. But if you see on the customer support side or making certain models on the risk or some kind of a predictive or forecasting models, we have done enough work on that side. So if I divide it, it will be primarily into 2-3 areas where we have Bank of Baroda has worked on. One is related to the customer service part, where we are not only AI part, we have gone into the Gen AI use cases also, and we have come out with a virtual relationship manager, which is doing quite good. We have come out with a couple of options for our new to bank customers. They find it difficult to interact or reach out to the bank branches and get the right kind of information at the time convenient to them. So for that, we have worked out a kind of a model and an agent which works, which is language agnostic, which is something which can handle unstructured queries as well. And this is something which is helping us. It is deployed into a good territory, and we are getting quite a good response out of it. The third area where we have put it is on the second area is related to the educating the staff members and bringing them up into this particular curve and understanding understanding the nuances of it from both sides, from the advantage side as well as the risk side. Both. So that is something which we are doing it, and that is again is a quite an elaborate program which we have rolled out for all our employees. So that's the second area. The third aspect on which we are working it out is primarily related to the fraud risk. And that is an area where large amount of data consumption is required, and if you are to do it at scale and with the kind of a volume which we handle it, it is absolutely essential that we use some of these latest tools, and we are using it quite extensively. Few of the use cases which I have talked about is something which is now we are rolled out to our other associates and subsidiaries as well. So this is how largely we are looking at from an AI perspective. Going forward in the resilience side, obviously apart from the improving the testing phases and other things and all, some kind of a predictive analysis or a EWS kind of a thing is something which we can be thought through. But as of now, we have not deployed AI completely into that aspect. That's all from my side. Thank you.
That's very helpful and provides a good perspective. There are these different functions in which you've embedded AI and now you're relying on it. And to the earlier point on model governance, I'm sure that that's also embedded into it. A corresponding functional area is also core banking purely. And Mr. Chahra, I'll come to you this time. As a leader in core banking solutions as well, and you partner with so many banks, how are you thinking as well from a provider lens that the service should be uninterrupted? Banks have been demanding that we need to be resilient at all times. How are you enabling them? What are the learnings that others can also take from that?
Thank you, Anshul, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a topic which has to be core to our industry, as well as obviously it has to be core to all of us who are building software for the industry very deeply. As Avinash said, resilience has to come starting from design in the entire software development lifecycle, delivery and deployment, and support lifecycle. There are multiple dimensions to this topic. You know, since there is a separate topic on cybersecurity, I'll keep it light and focus on core banking. When we think of application design, over the last 12 years now, we have been componentizing our capability so that different components of our solution can be deployed, upgraded independently, and scaled independently. All of these components are being deployed in a cloud native format so that we can choose to take advantage of scalability, dynamic performance improvement, the entire conversation around can I have scale cube models, horizontal, vertical, functional scalability being done. How do we do data sharding? How do we use cache to support requirements which are emerging in the market? And the focus for us has been today itself, many of our clients who are sitting in the audience process, over 200 million transactions per day on our platform. And we know it's going to grow more. So how do we create foundations for the 10x growth and start taking in time so that when we start to look at those requirements become real, we are ready. The entire world of embedded finance, we talked about how we are engaging with partners, is going to continue to propel the high value, low value, high volume use cases, what we have seen on UPI across platforms, whether it is lending, whether it is wealth management. And we believe we have a role to play in making sure our clients in the room are ready for that reality. Now the trick is, how do you make sure you do it, not just a software development perspective, but deployment and support perspective. And that's where the progressive modernization start coming in. That's where the observability, which we have baked in our solutions, start coming in. That's where the services like Finacle Assure, which we have launched, wherein we will continue to monitor the performance in the system and make sure that system continues to deliver on the performance requirement. Learning, we talked about machine learning from a perspective of customer service. How do you start learning from the telemetry data which is coming in, proactively do things instead of reactively doing? How do you make sure that you can respond back very quickly in case there is a disruption going to come in? So in summary, I think it's a multi-dimensional approach. From a software vendor perspective, the way we design, the way we develop, the way we deliver and package our solution, the way we allow our clients to deploy it, and how do we monitor the way they're getting used?
I think you bring two different perspectives here, Mr. Chahra. If you talked about software development, you talked about deployment, and then production run as well. And therefore, the shift that you're also pointing towards is from software development to product development. The entire life cycle needs to be managed. And a foundational capability you called out is observability. And interestingly, the connected capability that you're also sharing is being able to anticipate a lot of these disruptions that might come up and then being prepared for it. It's a different perspective that's not really taken by different service providers or also by individuals or banks who are building on their own as well. I think it's a good learning to take away. I want to extend the same topic, but also from another function as well, which is payments. It's a critical function within our banks. And if I come to you, Mr. Sabharwal, for a minute here, when we look at both resiliency and productivity, how do we ensure that these learnings, these foundational capabilities, I'm sure that from your experience you would have seen many other capabilities as well, and And you would also want to make sure that those capabilities are there in your clients. How do you ensure that you are both advising your clients, your customers, the banks as well, to make sure that productivity and resiliency is not just about survival, it's about making these as your business advantage, as your strategic advantage. Can you talk about that?
Sure, Anshul. And again, if I just take it as the driver, what is the driver for this? The driver is this constant consumer behavior change. Yeah? So there are more and more ways that the consumer is wanting to pay. We've seen that digital transactions now go more than, let's say, the physical transactions. Yeah, so again, I think in the morning presentation, we saw also that the upcoming virtual transactions, so these are going to grow. With this, the expectation is that, again, we have this concept of real time, near real time, but it is at the speed of a wink. If you miss, or if you're not able to respond to that within that time period, you're going to lose the customer's attention, you're going to lose the business, he's going to go elsewhere because he is now used to that kind of, let's say, an experience over there. So given this background, what do banks now need to do? I mean, how do they sort of meet this challenge? So they have also to take a digital first approach. They've also got to sort of enhance their systems and their capabilities to do this. Now, is the right way that the bank invest themselves in this technology? They continue to upgrade or upskill, let's say, their overall teams. They invest in, let's say, hardware infrastructure. Or is the better way that they outsource it to, let's say, a processor who could do this on their behalf while they sort of manage the core customer, the customer behavior, how they differentiate in front of the customers, and leave the heavy lifting to a processor. In terms of competitiveness, so what we have seen is that cloud-based processors who can offer a cloud-native solution are able to, let's say, offer a key differentiator to banks which will help them in this need. Yeah? So cloud over here is an enabler. It is an enabler to meet the end business need, which is, if I, let's say, put it in this thing, is that the first part is about speed to market. Now, cloud, again, services which are built cloud native have this concept of containerization and microservices which enable a faster rollout. So you don't have to sort of change your whole ship or the whole large piece of software, but you can change that small piece which can sort of help that. So it sort of by design, you're able to respond faster. The other term, again, like I said, that we have real-time, near real-time, it's also in the stream. Yeah. So a lot of real-time streaming, a lot of data events which are there, which get generated during a payment transaction. Now, a cloud-based provider, native provider, will be able to, let's say, disseminate all this authorization information, all this transaction data to the vast, let's say, downstream systems that the bank has, and they can use that for monitoring purposes, they can use them for customer alert purposes, they can build some contextual commerce and actually make some buy now, pay later offerings and all. So it's a world of, let's say, options which are sort of available in that ways as well. Yeah. Another thing that, let's say, a cloud-based provider will be able to help in terms of increasing the, let's say, efficiency of the bank is something which is, again, by design, what we call as continuous improvement, continuous development, CI/CD. Now, through this, he can offer automatic product upgrades, enhancements, capabilities, flexibility, compliances, all coming through seamlessly as a part of the process. You don't have to wait, let's say, for a large upgrade cycle, which will happen 5 to 7 years, or till then you're sort of on a legacy, on an old version of the platform. So all these things are sort of, let's say, helpful. Yeah. Again, I think we've all known and we've all experienced that using RESTful APIs, having a digital framework underpinned by that, does bring in efficiencies. Yeah. And if you look at a combination of these RESTful APIs, if you look at these data streams, if you look at these ISO transaction-based messages, it also eases, let's say, the integration with the bank's wider, let's say, third-party or downstream systems as well. Yeah. So it's all, like I said, we are now a part of an ecosystem. It's not that you're in a separate island or you're just a one-off kind of a thing. So again, you need to be there. I think, again, we had this discussion in the morning wherein we talked about embedded finance. Yeah. So it's not only, let's say, about the provider being able to offer microservices, but also, let's say, the bank being able to strip its entire, let's say, portfolio and offer those small services which are there at the, let's say, at the point of sale or at this thing. So again, the most common example that we have is of insurance. So whenever we are buying our travel tickets or doing our travel bookings, you just do one click to include and the insurance as well. So it's a part of that. So you don't have to go separate to a banking app or a banking provider to get that. So all those things are sort of there. So these productivity, again, the whole automation automation that you can build around that. So in terms of testing, in terms of compliance, in terms of patching, so all these can come natively and provide that competitiveness, the advantage to the bank to, let's say, go out and compete in the market and be, let's say, relevant in this digital world. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sabharwal. I think you've shared you touched upon a number of themes. You started with talking about people as a theme and having talent to make sure that we are able to talk about or have engineering excellence, if I have to call that out. You talked about cloud as a foundational capability. You built on top of Mr. Chaira's point of having smaller components and having those Lego-like components and making sure that you are loosely coupled, but then again, you can plug and play and have those capabilities, and then observability anyway as a theme is something that continues as a capability. Now, if I just look across all the inputs that are coming in, observability becomes like a foundational capability from a resilience perspective. And I'd like to come to you, Mr. Agrawal, on this. From your work as well, how do you see where is the industry from an observability perspective going on? How do you ensure that, again, the same question as well, that people can anticipate these challenges, also use observability as a capability, but also a strategic differentiator? Can you talk about your experience, any war scars that you would like to share, success stories, anything that clients are doing very well from your perspective, please share that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Arjun. So I would like to share a few things here. One good thing is that in my family, I have 4 generations. My father who's in 70s, me, my son who's in teens, and my nephew who's in is like 10 years old. And in all of this, like Mr. Sabharwal said, it is the people who are driving this behavior, right? And in 4 generations, I see the difference, how the payments and all these banking things are happening. Like for my nephew, it's just a matter of click, and he wants it to happen now. They don't have that patience. For my father, he still wants to go back to the way check. He wants to deposit the check and feel the comfort that I have given this and everything is in black and white. So it's the people who are driving this behavior. Now, talking about, and I'm really privileged here that sitting right in the middle where I have Sir Shekhawat sir, who is actually driving the compliance, like Seva portals and all of these things, which are real-time incidents about driving resiliencies. And I have Mr. Avinash sir, who is helping us, enabling it. Whatever we talk, we are actually doing it. So if you say the live case study, I really have the case study sitting next to me. So his initiative, one of the initiatives in the bank was one action, one alert. Can you come down to that point, that efficient system in the whole of the organization, like Axis Bank, that you can have one action and one alert to solve it? And that cannot happen unless you have AI-enabled platforms, which can go all the way to analyze every single entity. Like if you see any applications in the bank today, there's diverse applications. There are completely cloud SaaS-based applications. There are PaaS applications. There are applications which are owned at the data center and managed locally, but still running on a container-based platform. And then there are applications which are completely legacy, like core banking platforms, which are still very legacy, and they are now moving towards the containerization or SaaS-based platforms. Right? So if I combine all of these things, the biggest challenge today is that the technology, all these core technologies were designed 10 or 20 years later. Their scalability was very old, compared to internet banking, which has recently been redeveloped in the banks, and they are scaling on demand. Or UPI application, in a day they are doing 5 to 6 billion transactions. So their scalability is extremely high. When they hit the number of transactions on these legacy systems, they are unable to scale. So a lot of initiatives which has again come from the compliance side, from RBI and other defense of ministries, Ministry of Finances, that they are saying you hollow the core. They are saying you come out with things like CKYC, where you have one customer and one ID for that customer within the bank. So all these are the various initiatives where the value from observability is, the first value is, it is able to stitch a transaction right from the point of origin, which could be a mobile app or a web app, all the way to the last leg, which could be a core banking system, or it could be a third-party service from where the service is being taken, like Aadhaar card authentication, etc. Right, so this first ability to stitch the transaction. Second ability is to see if this is my transaction, what is running underneath it. So that is the ability to build a topology of all the single components which are there. Third is to analyze the data on all of these components together in one place. So on an average, per day, data generated by a single transaction, or I would say a single journey, is somewhere around 30 to 40 terabytes. That's it for across, like you have storages, you have network devices, you have firewalls, you have your application server, web server, cloud services, with all these data together. And if you say that I will analyze all this data manually, it's a myth. You cannot. You need an artificial intelligence which will actually analyze all this information. Now, if I say there's just one AI which will help this, the answer is no. You need to have multiple types of AI which will do this. So as an observability platform, what we have been able to achieve is that first thing is analyze the root cause of the thing. Like, I'll give you a very simple example, and I'm sure many of us must have faced that when you are working with your application, few users get evicted of the transactions, but all other users are happy. And those few users would be very critical to the bank, and then it will start escalating from the top that I was doing a transaction, can you help my trace and transaction? On an average, there are like 50 to 60 servers on which the logs have to be analyzed just to come to know where did the transaction go and where did it fail. So to be able to analyze all this data in real time is magic. And this is what I can clearly say we have been able to achieve here in Axis Bank and many other banks in India as well. Second initiative which has just come is Resilience Operations Center, wherein the initiative says that you build a team, a COE team, you bring all the people together, whether it is network, whether it is storage, whether it is application, whether it is anybody or compliance, security, everybody sit in one place. Any alert which gets generated should be analyzed automatically, and those people should do 3 tasks. First task would be to actually see, can it be automatically remediated or at least mitigated for that situation. Second thing which will act in the place is, can I submit this to an application team and say you need to analyze in this, and it goes in the shift left strategy of that bank. With the vendors, with the application owners, it goes in the shift left strategy. And third thing is, can I predict this? 3 months earlier, I can predict that my trading on this day is going to fail. So predictive analysis or forecasting analysis is something that the second level of AI is there. The last AI which will help in building this resiliency is generative AI, which can consume all this data, and I can ask questions. Last weekend, we had this situation, do I need to know anything about it? And the generative AI will go back and look at all the situations which have happened and give me one summary of answer. So that is the level which we have been able to achieve, and we are working with Avinash sir very closely on that. So this is what I want to share, Anshul, and really privileged to have all of this team people here that I'm working closely with.
Mr. Agarwal, thank you so much. You've touched upon a number of topics, and the color that you brought to this foundational capability of observability, I think that's very, very commendable. Even this concept of a ROC or an ROC, I think it's important, it's critical, and needs to be developed further. Looking at the time as well, I have one question for the full set of panel members. And if you look at the mix of our panel members right now, we are already an ecosystem here. We have bankers, we have regulators, we have service providers, we have software providers together. And it's a common question to all of us, that as a partner ecosystem, how can we actually work together? Is there a framework that we can work upon? Is there a framework that's already we are working upon? What are the learnings that we can share? IBA is an event where we are networking and sharing ideas. How can we build on top of it and also then responsibly work on these themes of observability, AI, data, microservices? We talked about several of them today. Mr. Shekhawat, maybe I'll request you to start, and then others can please pitch in.
So in any new technology, any new event that occurs, whenever there is a paradigm shift, obviously there has to be a collaboration across the innovators, the users, and the regulators, and for that matter, even going beyond us, it is the sovereign itself. So this is one area where you see everybody getting involved. Yeah. So right from the sovereign coming out with things like the DPDP Act, the rules now telling you broadly how you can store, share, use, process data, who can do what, and what are the accountabilities and what are the safeguards needed. So they've done it at a sovereign level. Then you come down to regulators like us who are sector specific, or you look at IBA or you look at SEBI for their respective areas. So we all try to bring in some kind of a broad principle or a framework which is aligned with the national interest. So here the collaboration that we take from the industry and from the users and from the developers, innovators, is what are the realms of feasibility, what are the contours within which we can really achieve something meaningful, at the same time not cross the risk lines and boundaries which have been set up by the sovereign. So we need to work in defining those boundaries, and that's where we come out with principle-based regulations more than rule-based regulations. So for innovative technology, innovative systems, it's always principle-based, and that's what we have done. We've come out with cybersecurity guidelines, we've come out with model-related guidelines. We will be coming out with some other guidelines as well in the areas of digital lending apps. We have already come out for digital lending products which are there in the banking space. So these are all principle-based guidelines, and that's where we work with. Another aspect that we work on is the sandbox. So we allow, absolutely nascent technologies to be actually sandboxed with us so that we understand the technologies, the limitations, as well as we look at the regulations which should be built around it. The last thing which I want to leave the entire panel with the thought is that traditionally all banking systems were working around financial risk. So we had something we call the stress testing models that we had. But unfortunately for the products which are coming into the market, this thought itself seems to be somewhere lagging behind. So we don't have any stress testing models. We don't know what happens when a model goes rogue. We don't know what happens if there is data corruption or there's some kind of data manipulation done by somebody to create some outcome. So we have no way to test the outcomes of these kind of things. All we have is the standard DR, and the BCP kind of a thing. Yeah. So we need to really, that's a long journey. So I think from resilience perspective, that's one space wherein we may be moving ahead. That's my thought to it.
Very, very helpful, Mr. Shekhawat. And principle-based guidelines anyway gives a lot of freedom to banks to actually then adapt it in their own way as well. Mr. Raghavendra, Mr. Mudaliar, if from a bank perspective you would like to add, I'll request you to comment on how we can partner.
Yeah.
Better.
So one thing which has definitely happened over the last few years is that banks have started collaborating amongst themselves a lot more. We have started sort of engaging with the product companies. We have started engaging with the regulators directly. Okay, in all of these areas. I mean, resiliency, I think everybody sort of recognizes the fact that, it is something which is an industry concern, okay, and we need to be sort of, feeding out of each and every, bank's learnings over there. And I can speak about it. One of the reasons for being here is, to sort of interface with a whole bunch of friends and exchange notes in terms of, what is happening in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just last year, for example, the regulator had invited us, for a very open, frank discussion in terms of, how banks are thinking about ransomware. Okay. Similarly, from a sovereign standpoint, NCIPC had basically sort of nudged one of the large private sector banks to sort of invite all of us together, and we had a fairly informal session in terms of, how are we sort of thinking around it. Similar conversations happening with the product companies as well. Be it the core providers, be it the card providers, etc. So there are learnings. To Dr. Shekhawat's point, this is an area where we are currently still focused in terms of, the entire DR BCP concepts. I think banks are much better at it. Previously it used to be once in a year, now we do it multiple times. We have started stretching it longer. But the avenues have sort of gone up. It could be cyber, it could be natural, it could be, to the point which sir said, it could be a data issue. And the next level of evolution for all of us is, to some extent, try to think like a Netflix. Can we actually, do some kind of a chaos theory and, go further on that? Clearly, I mean, an entertainment side going down versus a bank going down, I mean, the implications are very different and we need to be cognizant of that. But what I can say is, with all the conversations which is happening around, I think everybody is aware of it and everybody is, fairly primed in terms of learning from experiences and improving.
And therefore, it's a problem to solve collectively.
Yes.
Makes sense.
So I'll just add in one line. In this uncertain world and the way that things are changing at a fast pace, unless otherwise we collaborate, all of us sitting here and sitting here, it will be difficult to navigate and navigate well. That's all I can sum up with it. Thank you.
Makes sense. Any comments from Mr. Chahira, Sabharwal, Mr. Agarwal?
I suspect we'll run out of time.
Yeah.
I think colleagues like ourselves have a responsibility to bring the industry together. We have an opportunity to learn from many of you. And as Minash said, we have always opened the conversation directly with architects and the product organization so that we can understand the themes which are not only influencing the way software run today, but the way we'll run in decade forward. We got your message, so we will continue to work on this.
Wonderful. I think the insights were quite useful. There were several themes that all of us built on each other. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. We'll close the topic today and thank everyone for attending today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anshu.
Thank you to our insightful panelists and moderator for your valuable contributions today. We request you to wait for a group photograph, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us a deeper understanding on the topic. Thank you.